that are still in morning. And good morning, afternoon to those of us who are have already reached afternoon. And welcome to the Buildings Active Coalition BAC Learning webinar. As you know, we run our webinars on the second Wednesday of every month, and this is being recorded, so that you know, and it will be on our website in the next few days. That's www.enniscorthyforum.org. If you keep your microphones on mute, particularly while Sebastian is doing his presentation, we'd appreciate it. And there will be opportunities for questions and a discussion in about half an hour. And we're pleased to run this session with Sebastian Moreno Vega. Sebastian is an architect and the founding member of A2M Architecture since the year 2000. His firm designs regenerative architecture for people and for the planet, operating at the crossroads of science, art, and technology, demonstrating for more than 20 years that we can not only limit our impact on the environment, but go beyond to the point of regenerating it. Sebastian has served as president of the Belgian Passive House Association for 8 years, contributing to making Brussels the first region in the world to adopt the passive standard as a norm in 2015. He's also a lecturer at ULB University in Brussels. Today, he's a board member of NYHP. His firm has offices in Brussels, Lisbon, Luxembourg, and New York. And the title of the presentation by Sebastian today is Passive House, What Comes Next? And the purpose of the presentation will be to discuss how things have been operating since the Passive House standard became mandatory for everyone in the Brussels region 9 years ago. So without further ado, let me turn the microphone over to Sebastian. Sebastian, you go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So I'm going to start now. I'm going to try to do that in 20-30 minutes to give some place for the questions. First, I try to share the screen. Hold on. It should work now. Normally you see the screen now.
Yes, lovely. Good. Yeah.
So the original title was indeed Passive House, What's Next? And just an hour ago, I changed it with a quote from a very famous former the governor of it was for the Bank of England, McCartney. It was talking about the tragedy of the horizon, because when I finished to set up the presentation, I think it's all going to be all about that. So if you know him, he wrote a fantastic speech 9 years ago, and it was all about how do we commit ourselves, and due to the lifetime of a politics or of a government, I mean, in democracy, which I don't know, lasts 5 or 4 years, unless dictature, when it can be 30 years, and then if you count what's the lifetime of people who are doing buildings, who are not only private, but real estate and so on, it's as long as the asset gives income, so it can last, I don't know, 10-15 years. For example, also the lifetime of designers in architecture or doing passive house, as we did. For example, we are doing that since 24 years, some since 15 years, some from 25 years. So what's that lifetime? It's quite to nothing compared to CO2 lifetime. Once it's emitted in the atmosphere, they're going to last, I don't know, 300, 500 years. So you see, it's also related, what's the courage of what we're going to decide, because after a decision, the government disappear and gone. So that's really a kind of that makes me explain why we are in such a situation. Every time we present something, yeah, Ken knows that because he saw that so many times. Sorry, Ken. It's a quote from Pink Floyd. It's we always locate where is Belgium, where I'm coming from, because as I said, it's almost like a joke as a country. It's so small. It's even maybe half of the size than New York State, which is yeah. And compared to New York City, we are like in a region. Brussels is like maybe a third of the size of city of New York. So and on top of that, we are very far from having nice, appealing, sexy skylines. Very far. Wherever we go in the world, we have more beautiful skylines. The only thing is, when you take a picture of Brussels, wherever you go, you see that everywhere in the city, wherever you walk through, you're going to see passive house all over, in retrofit, in new builds, and for all kind of destination of all kind of size. So that's the only thing we can say who could be appealing, who can be appealing. And all that why is because, as you heard from Barbara Ann, it's we adopted a law that came into effect in 2015, where passive house has been integrated into the official energy calculation methodology, and that impact 100% of building permit demand. It can be new build, in retrofits, all of it, 100%. So that was really a premiere. And it happens mainly when we look backward how it could be. It's mainly due to ignorance of the people who voted, hopefully. So I think this is one of good help, is ignorance of people. So the law was voted in actually in 2011. It was a parliament vote after 3 sessions. It's been voted. So, and it was voted at the unanimity, 100%. And even the people in the opposition vote because their expert didn't understand really well what we were talking about. That was fantastic. Nevertheless, after the law has been voted in 2011, 1 year after, we went to the sector together with the minister. She was a fantastic minister. She had in charge environment, etc. She was very, very, very tough woman. After we went to the real estate, to the builders association, to architects, engineers, but first she voted the law. And what happened 1 year after the law has been voted? It was 2011, so 4 years before the law was supposed to come into effect. It was like it becomes crazy. For a year, we had like most than panic. It was like all the sector says, "Are you crazy?" We were in 2012. It's "You crazy? It's going to be the bankrupt of the region. No one is going to be ready for it. How can you train 25,000 workers? How can you train 6,000 architects, etc., etc.? It's impossible, and it's going to be extra cost. We all going to leave and going to quit Brussels region. So it's going to be the end. That was the end. So actually, we did 2-3 years after that of training and help, etc. I'm going to come back on it. Nevertheless, January 1st, 2015, because they all predicted it was going to be the end of the world, I took my camera and I took some pictures all over the city in the early morning, and nothing. No one cared. No one even went out, no strike, nothing. So it was all that for that. The year after the law came into effect, there's been approximately 30,000 building permit application, new build, retrofit, landmark or listed buildings, tiny house up to high rise, shopping mall, prison, hospitals, all kind of. And in the law, because we were very a bit panicking together with the administration and the ministers, they put a way that you can ask to be exempted for reason that you have to prove, for good reason. So guess how many exemption has been requested the year after the law came into effect? So if it was a quiz, to give you honestly, we had people who say from D, like 11,000 up to A, 2,000. Actually, there have been 257 requests to be exempted. Only 257. Again, all that for that, my goodness. So it's exactly a situation when back in the day you could smoke in public area, in airplanes, then it's been banished. And in the late 80s, begin 90s, everyone like, it's going to be the bankrupt. And now it's normal. So this is situation we face now today in Brussels now. Passive house, that's normal. It's even boring. What is that? So that was the government when they voted. And the thing is, 7 years before the law has been voted, 6 years before, so it was voted in 2011. So we were in 2005, 2006. We were in Brussels. It was one of the worst region in all Europe. It was one of the worst CO2 footprint per inhabitant per building. So in only 5-6 years, how do we get there? Starting from nowhere, really. It was very, and Belgians and people from Brussels are not green. They're not Green Party. Then they don't care. They're very pragmatic. They, like everyone, they hate change, especially in very conservatory association like builders, developers, architects, everyone. So actually, there's been a huge work in a European project years ago. That was a long time ago. That ended in 2015. It was a project with money from Energy Europe. What's called PASREG.eu, involving PHI people from Milano, from England, from Bulgaria, Croatia. It was all over Europe, from France, etc. There have been 14 regions involved, and the idea was to study, okay, what were the good practice from Brussels, even from Innsbruck in Austria, and from Frankfurt nearby Darmstadt, and what can we take from that? And all the solution package has been translated in 15 language. Everything is available. Out of that, we discovered that, well, it's not us. It's actually it was Dragomir who worked in Bulgaria for one of the work package, and the reason we could achieve that low, it was only because of three reasons. And actually, when you look backwards, it was the same situation where for for smoking zone or for electric devices, etc. It happens the same. So as soon as you have a strong framework, how do you assess when you are classify a grade A or C or F? Secondly, when you have local examples, beacons, demonstration project, it has to be local, not in another country. Then you can vote a strong policy who is based on these two. If one of the three is missing, there's no way that's going to work. So the strong framework was already there in Belgium, as in most of European countries. It was is the grade, actually, the energy calculation. It was already running plus or minus. Okay. Nevertheless, it was already a framework. So everyone, when the law was voted, knew, okay, what is a building A and building F. Secondly, there was already, in most of the European countries, not all of them, there was already a strong on-site, on construction site quality control, which became mandatory since then. So there was already these two. If one of the two is missing, forget it. How can you ask someone to do a passive house if it can even not put one bricks on top of another? Come on. So you see, that was a strong framework, could be another. Secondly, in 2005, 2006, with the minister, we launched exemplary program. We have the same in Amsterdam. You have that a bit here and there. Same in France, like Relaunch France. There are all these kind of program, how to accelerate the production of demonstration projects. So the first year we launched it, we had like more than 100 projects, and the question was very simple and very easy way. It was, how far can you go? And if you go as far as you can, we're going to give you money. It was with a maximum of 400,000 euro. So I can tell you, if you give that to anyone, can be my grandmother or a real estate, they're going to run for it, of course. And very quickly, in a couple of years, we had more than 1 million square feet, meter square. So it's 10 million square feet, 10 million square feet, 1 million meter square in a couple of years of all kind of projects. Some everything went wrong, some where everything went well. So in very short time, in less than 5 years, we could have a huge mass of data, how to do it, etc. Some of the lesson learned, that could be an apart webinar. We discovered that before even we start training for everyone, 95% of the people who have been granted had no training, have not been trained. I'm sorry. Secondly, they all had to achieve air tightness, which is very low, 0.6 volume per hour. And the failing factor was less than 5%, even without training. I don't say we don't need training, but, well, it's a surprise. Another surprise, and what was the most unexpected one, is there was a lot of projects where they had no extra cost. When I mean no extra cost, is at the end of the work has been finished at a cost of 90 or 85% compared to business as usual. So how was it possible? Because in Germany, we learned in 2003, it's normal to be more expensive because it's good for the planet, so you have to suffer. And how come that 50% of them had no extra cost. And another thing, when we launched this exemplary program, it was just, we give you money if you do something. We didn't say go to passive house or go to low energy. We said just go to somewhere. 75% of the people who apply for this program went to passive house. Of course, they wanted the money. That's all. So you see, it was a lesson learned. So based on these two, and because we had so many survey on that, I was head of passive house association back in the days. Then the minister, the government have been voted, re-elected. It happens once in the story of Brussels region. The government went back for a second row, I would say, and then they vote the law, and it was done. And it's only after having voting the law based on what happened on the local markets and with this framework that they went to make a huge support. And that's something that we cannot underestimate. So if you have someone who wants a strong policy, but if he has no local examples, it's not going to work. If you have no strong framework, it's not going to work. And if you have the three of them, if you cannot provide free, but it has to be a free support. You know, we had more than 1,000 of free help that we had to provide for the sector because people were running for the money. So if you cannot provide a very but substantial support for the sector in all kind of network, you need ambassadors, it's not going to work. So one of the very first things we did after the law was voted in 2011. So you remember the image before, it was like almost end of the world in 2012. The minister and the government, we as Passive House Association, and every single actors, it was like REBNY in New York, so the real estate, the builders, engineer association, training centers, you cannot imagine what, education and so on. We sign all a kind of an agreement. We're going to work together because in 4 years, the law is going to come into effect. So there was also in that moment, we published that magazine. It was a free quarterly magazine, 50,000 prints every 3 months. Training, we provide more than 6,000 trainings all over the city. But it's not just we as an association. We had to admit very, very fast and let the thing going out. And it escaped completely out of our control. And it's funny because that's one of the very first things that Wolfgang Feist told us when we launched our Passive House Association in 2006. He said, look, you're going to succeed. The day is going to be mandatory. And you have to accept that at the moment, it's going to be out of your control. You don't control it anymore. It means the market is going to be back again and lead again. And this is what happened a bit faster than foreseen. It's a bit sad for us. But you see the people here on the right, we don't even know how they did the training on Passive House. And fine, good. Here on the left, on the right, you see ambassadors, even the Builders Association start, and it start and spread all over. And that's a good sign that at the moment, even the control of the building, because certification disappeared since 2015, because it's in the code. So now to check is done by administration. Of course, we trained some of them and now they're doing it. So that's a thing that you have to be ready for at the moment. It's going to escape you. And that's fantastic. And you see in a couple of years with that strong policy that first vote something strong based on the two first elements. In 5 years, Brussels could have more than 1,500,000 meters square, 16 million square feet in 5 to 6 years. The two over the region were adopting what I hear most of the time. I mean, 99% of the time I hear from politics, better doing small step by small step. And actually the sector hates that. So this is a quote from BAM. It's like Skanska, one of the largest company, developer and builder. We have in Northern Europe, they're also in Northern US, Northern America. He said, look, we hate change, but if we have to be under one law, please do it. You can do it harsh, I don't care, but do it once, please. Stop changing every 2-3 years and improving 2-3 years. Please, we prefer to have a smash in the face at once and be good for 20 years. So that's his quote. He was one of the guy against all that. And now he is one of the developer company who are doing the highest building. So you see all this kind of here, all kind of design, even with some superstar like Jean Nouvel or all this kind of Snorreta or business as usual in retrofit, in new build, or old fashioned. You see all scans. So this is what happened if you go now in Brussels. So now, because the idea is to talk very briefly, where are we now in this situation? So we just architects. So Barbara, fantastic introduction. We just do building. So we do a lot of trainings or conference a bit all over the world. We have 4 locations for the moment. We did, since we started in 2000, we did approximately 100 projects. 100% of them are passive house. You see here the size, some very small up to very large scale. And on the right, you will see how many liters of coffee we drink per project. So the very last one is a huge retrofit of half million square feet. So it's 55,000 meters square. And the first one here below, this is our very first passive house. So you can imagine how many hours we die there. So that's some just numbers. Okay, how many people we train, etc. How many meters square we have designed already in passive house. So the question is, very quickly, when passive house, it's normal, it's in the code. Okay, whatever you put on the market, whatever you do in new build or retrofit, there's nothing special anymore. That's just one more building. So very quickly, we, and not only we, but also our clients, developers, whatever, were going beyond, okay, what can we do next? So a bit before COVID crisis, a bit before war crisis, a bit before in Europe, we had lack of wood. There were no more wood, there were no more steel, no more aluminum, no more copper for 1.5 years. All before all this crisis, the idea was, can we go after? Because it's sure we're never going to be able to retrofit all the planet. All the planet is not going to go to passive house. There is no way. And still, we are completely doomed. So the idea is, passive house is not a target. It's very far from a target. It's just a first step. Tiny, huge step, I don't care. It's only a starting point. And you can go way more beyond if you integrate it all, embodied energy, the CO2 footprint of the material you use, how you build to unbuild for future lack of resources. How can you achieve CO2 neutrality? Take into account all the impacts, how you manage water, we have no more drinkable water, how you do greenery, etc. And if you add one by one all these items now, you come to project that at the end, not only limit your impact on environment, but contribute to regenerate it. So this is where we are now in this kind of regenerative design. And it makes sense if you retrofit one building in a city block, please try that this building, when it's going to be retrofit or new build, is going to help the rest of the city block. So that's the idea. So to be pragmatic, that's an example. It's a new project that we got in competition in Luxembourg. It's a business park with co-living and office building. It's been taken by PwC, of course, because they assess, they are consultant to assess the CO2 neutrality of companies, etc. And as soon as they hear, oh, that's passive house, it's BREEAM outstanding, well platinum, the highest standard ever you can have, and this is going to be CO2 neutral, we take it straight away. So after we won the competition, a week after, they went to the client and say, oh, can we buy it? So the landlord has a heart attack. So you see, that's typically what happened when you do regenerative design. Same in reuse, in circular. Here, for example, it's a building we just finished. Everything has been taken from recycle or reuse, including the structure. And that's a premiere in Europe, to use a stock of old steel that was from Holland. We use it to build, but you need strong calculation methodology and so on. So it's a premiere. Again, retrofitting of old former office building into housing. That's something we do now more and more. So that's normal. This is another campus. It's a campus in Luxembourg. It's a large brownfield. And it's going to be 80,000, a bit less than 1 million square feet of office labs for startups. It's going to be up, co-working, co-living. So that's all the loop of elements we use. It's a continuous loop. So the passive house calculator is somewhere here, but it's a continuous loop from the very beginning. And after we deliver buildings using a lot of AI, parametric design, on-site control, etc. So that's something natural. So that's typically this project, the narrative, how it's going to be. So this brownfield is going to turn into this how we use parametric. I'm going a bit faster. All that for that. Another thing there that we use more and more is offsite construction. Everyone knows that already in passive house, of course, but the idea is to go beyond. And can we build to unbuilt? Can we build to unbuilt with element that you can click and unclick with no needs, with no glue? Can we go that far? And so that's a project we just start now. And the client wants that the site is going to be more than passive house, it's going to be off-grid, not only in building assembly, but also in energy and also in water, off-grid. So you don't have to be connected anymore. Over, ciao, fini. There's a part of retrofit. The CO2 is going to be even in negative because it's a clever system. One day I'm going to come back on it. So that's the large scale retrofitting I was talking, and that was the one on the top where we drank so many coffee with this one. So it's a bank, it's a building from SOM, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the famous, fantastic architect. It was back in the days, led by Gordon Bunshaft from New York in 1964. So it's a landmark. It's a listed building. Depending if you are in UK or in New York, it's protected in French, we say. So you cannot touch it. You can just, well, look at it. So it was a competition for the ING Bank, how to retrofit it. So we propose to go beyond passive house, of course, BREEAM outstanding, well platinum, of course, etc. So it's already in construction now, well, in retrofitting. So you see the same loop of all this software. It's almost over now. And of course, it hits most of the goals. We have the 17 UN goals. We like to mix it with the one which is here on the bottom, which comes out of that famous economic donut, if you remember, from Kate Raworth. She was one of the main, she wrote a fantastic book on this, just in 2012, with the minimum social you have to fulfill and don't mortgage the boundaries. So it's kind of rearrangement of the 17 goals. This one is going to hit also the European taxonomy. 2 of the first point are out. So when we see what are you good at, it's very easy to hit 10 to 11 goals of the 17 of the United Nations. So this is what we talk about. Is this one? It's almost finished now. They're going to be like 3,000 people who's going to come back in the office now in this one. And at the end, the thing is, this has been, well, we are still in process. It's almost over. And the construction cost, well, the retrofit cost, it's a bit less than business as usual. Actually, we're going to be at 65% compared to a stupid retrofit. And again, which is not good because we are paid on a percentage, so it's a catastrophe. But savings compared to the former situation, it's a building from 1964. Savings, we are talking then more than 3 million euro a year. 3 million euro a year savings. This is what we talk about. Last but not least, we make some extra now because it's more than passive house. This special treatment on the facade. That treatment has a special effect. It's to clean the concrete that is attacked by the NOx, by the gas. So the idea, the gas emission from car. So with this one, it's also a photocatalyzer. It means that it's going to really clean the air. So as soon as you have a bit of a sun and you have this NOx emission, which is, we are here, you see, but London, Paris, Amsterdam, we are all in the same situation. We are in the fog. It's the same in New York. We have the same, or in London. And we are here. So it's the worst zone all over Belgium. So with this product on the facade, it's going to clean the air. And doing that, plus the fact that it's passive house, a bit more, etc., the CO2 savings is going to be more than 75%. And because of the size of the building, that is as much as a forest, the size of 419 hectares, or a forest the size of a municipality per year. So this is what we are talking about, savings in CO2 with one building. So this is when we talk about regenerative design. So I'm almost over. So the question is, of course, it is too soon to know it is too late. So that's a picture I showed to the students at university. That's a map taken from the NASA when I'm born. So I'm very old, in 1963. It was the summer, 1963. When I was 22 years old, the year of the students nowadays, and last year. So it's going to be worse and worse. That's another graph we show because we did a Western Europe survey of the climate. And we see 2 years ago that we achieved the weather that was foreseen for the worst case scenario of 2050. we had this weather 2 years ago, so it's really like, so when we say it's a climate crisis means that one day is going to be solved, but it is not. It's never going to be solved. It's over. It's more of a drift that we should talk. Normal is not going to be anymore. It's no way. So we just have to learn to live with it. So when we say with that passive house law, it's fantastic because the region of Brussels launched that huge program. Of course, we have a drop in the CO2 emission. Of course, we have. But if you want to achieve CO2 neutrality, is this we have to achieve in 2050? Even if we have already that passive house law, we should retrofit two dwellings per hour, non-stop from now until 2050. We are far from that. If I'm in Paris, it's worse. We should retrofit non-stop 24 dwellings per hour to passive house, non-stop from now to 2050. London, 15, and actually in New York, it's not 25, it's a mistake, it's 30. So you see, we are far from that, very, very, very far. So when we all talk about 2050 neutrality, yeah, we communicate the same. We know it's no way. Doesn't mean that we don't have to target it. So that's all the European countries, all the CO2 emission we have. It's no way we're going to achieve that. It's no way. You know, if we want to achieve CO2 neutrality, we should reduce the global CO2 emission in the world by a minimum of 5% each year, non-stop until 2050, all over the world. It happens only 3 times in the history of the world. It happens, that drop of CO2 in the world. It was just in 1929, just after the Second World War, it's because China and Germany stopped the industry. And the last time it happened, it was during COVID time. So if you want to achieve CO2 neutrality, every year, starting now until 2050, we should have the same effect than this per year, non-stop. We're far from that. We're very far. Today, it's even worse. That was last year when the communication here, they explained that, look, we're going to have, maybe we're going to have to target not the 1.5 degree, but maybe 2, maybe 2.9. So this is a quote from a consultant in France. He said, look, there are 3 methodology to learn wisdom. One is to reflect, to be reflective, which is very noble. The second is if you want to imitate, which is, of course, the easy one. And the other one is by experience. And of course, it's going to be bitter. And he said, look, it's clear that if you cannot achieve the target, we are in the situation, stop changing target. Just readjust or try to how to manage the intermediate actions or the steps to reach it. So this is where we are now, because we know we're not going to do it. So we are more in the mood. This is why we go towards very much beyond passive house to regenerative design, because we all fail. So we should try to succeed how to mitigate it. So that's the famous boundaries that we we are over. It's done. So when I mean to end with a small positive impact, and Isho knows already. So when you see on the same scale here, you see that's Brussels, the one, the small black dot here, compared to Australia, Vancouver, etc. So we love to say, like Peter Parker, you know, not with great, but with small power, because Belgium has no power. Can come sometimes great responsibility. Actually, it's not Peter Parker, it's coming from Voltaire. So we Belgians did in tropical country and Belgian embassy, it's a passive house in tropical. We did the same, another building in the coldest point on earth where you have minus 90 degrees, minus 130 plus or minus Fahrenheit. It's also a passive house. So now we used to say as Belgian, look, with these 2 extreme in tropical and in the coldest point on earth, both passive house, we did it. The rest of the world, I'm sorry, there is no excuses. There is no. So if you take the Köppen map of the climate, if you do solution in that kind of Western Europe, I would say that could work even in South Australia, in Vancouver, in Seattle, in part of Chile or Peru, you see, because it's the same climate, exact same climate, same solution. That's a project we're doing with Enriquez in Vancouver. Same solution, of course, material is going to be different. Solutions are the same. If I take in New York, of course, it's tropical, but it's the same if I go to the Gold Coast in Australia, for example, not far from Sydney. If I take, we have project in Lebanon or in Rabat. So this one is under construction. We did also a Belgian embassy there, and it's off-grid. It's more than passive house. It's unconnected. So I'm sorry, if you do that, you can go to Perth. I can go to some other places with the same climate. So again, just by spreading the same, we are studying now a huge project in Illinois. It's not far from Phoenix. It's dry, hot desert. So if you can do it there, I'm sorry, in the middle of the desert, the Sahara, or in the middle of Australia, same solution. Again, same. And I'm gonna end with these two: the Kinshasa I show, and the same for Antarctica, the the South Pole. So, and to end, with that something that is above us and escape us completely. We did as a joke. It was really the very first Icebox Challenge in 27. We had only but 20 to 30,000 visitors. Nothing. We did it again in 2009 and 2018. Some of you were there, and we had more than 2 million visitors. Of course, it was Times Square. So in the meantime, all this Icebox Challenge really started as a joke with the minister and us. It was not serious. Spread all over. We have more than 18. And last year, by Licho, you show it at Pratt Institute. Nowadays, it's in Delhi. We launched a new one ourselves in Oslo, in Norway. So this is typically when we say, come on, it's possible to go beyond. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. That was just an extraordinary representation. I just see the applause coming from everybody. Thank you very much for that. I don't know how much time you've got before you have to run away, Sebastian. Can you do you have time for a question or two? Or have we already lost you?
Just a couple of minutes because I just ran a bit out of my time.
Okay. I will ask if anybody wants to ask a question, I will call on you first. But since I don't see any hands coming up, I see Ken's got a question. So Ken, fire away.
Hey, Sebastian, great. Always a pleasure. I'm curious about, the hot weather, hot climates and hot and humid climates. Like we're getting good traction in the colder areas, but there's forever this prejudice about it doesn't make sense in a hot climate and what do we do? But we see the actual data and results from like Southern California, which is an extremely forgiving climate. It still works and makes a big difference and is effective. I'm wondering about your conversations with potential clients in expanding the influence of this work and getting more projects done in those climates.
Yeah, we have now more and more experience in hot climate, but you have two types of hot climate. You have hot climate when it's dry, and some hot climates it's dry, and you have a difference in day and night. So it's another difference in the dry. If you have a difference more than 10 degrees day and night, you can cool down the building. If it's not, like in Rabat, then you must find other sources of cooling. But it's very easy to manage. Where we find it was super harsh, and for us it's the worst climate ever. It's the tropical zone, like as we have in Kinshasa. It's like you have it like in New York in summer, but all year long.
Yeah.
One of the things it was a surprise for us. We did that by accident, honestly. I cannot say that to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, of course, but we discovered that air tightness make more sense in a tropical country than in a gentle, cool Western Europe country. Because if you do the air tightness, instead of try to dehumidify the totality of the air of the city comes into all the leaks, you just have to dehumidify the air that comes through the not the X exchanger, but the ventilation. So when you do the ventilation recovery, it's actually to pre-dry the air. So you see, we discovered that some tips and tricks coming out of the principal concept, and the most unexpected was the air tightness. On the other hand, we insulated, not against the cold, but against the heat. So again, that Belgian embassy in that tropical zone, it's only an insulated building there.
But I'm wondering about that success and just but more culturally in terms of the clients and what they're looking for, and like how do we expand the conversation in the work that you're doing, like what the conversation that you had is in Arizona, in Tucson or Phoenix?
It's actually it's a Luxembourg developer who want to add 400 housing nearby Eloy, because nearby Hilo you have that skydivers drop zone where people from all over the planet come there to train, and they have to face lack of water, etc. So the idea for him is to develop there 400 housing that going to be off grid, even in water, energy that's peanuts, but also in water, with a small congress center. Yeah, but yeah, it's maybe better to meet these guys. But again, it's just by having all this extreme demand, and we always say yes as yes man. You know? And after it's like, oh my God, what the hell? How are we gonna face that? But honestly, when I said tropical country is the worst, it is not. Actually, it's zone like New York, because there you have extreme cold, windy winter, and you have extreme tropical condition in summer. So when you have both extreme climate, that's the top of the top of how to make it complicated. But again, with the experience that we saw even in Antarctica, come on, peanuts all over the planet. The rest it's peanuts. After it's just how to spread, etc. Of course.
I'm still sensitive on your schedule, Sebastian. If you're going to stay with us, we can ask you some more questions. You gave us a really great rundown on the conditions for success in Brussels, and you stepped us through that very nicely. Is there anything you would, looking back, say we could have done that better? Is there something that you think could be improved on, or is it just the perfect example?
I don't know, because I'm just architect, you know. For the moment, what I can say is that when I see every initiative all over, and the same, the one in that PASREG, you know, coming from Innsbruck or come from Darmstadt, Frankfurt, I think that kind of research process is, I think, one of the best for the moment. It's not because I'm not even Belgian, so I don't care. It's because in Innsbruck, when they launched it, they were one of the first, just after Darmstadt, because they are very, very volunteer people. They are very green and so on, which is fantastic. It's like an amazing zone, but nowhere in the planet you can find that. So
Yeah.
how can you replicate that? And even if I go to Peru, I'm Peruvian. How can I explain that to Lima? It's no way. The other one in Frankfurt, also it was in Darmstadt, it was by a bit of coincidence when Wolfgang Feist launched that. And also it's because at that moment he explained they were against nukes, and it was all this strike and so on. So it was part of a fantastic movement. But where do we have that in the world? And again, so when I see all that, and because it's the same question repeating all over, when people hate change, and this is why we think now. And one of the last thing what was nice with that PASREG, we had also Holland, Netherlands, and France. And they were saying that, look, in France and in Holland, you are nowhere. Why? It's because we ask too much. We ask survey on survey that has been surveyed. We ask question on question that has been asked again and again. Every new government, we start asking again. And in the meantime, we do nothing. So they said to us, like, please stop asking, just go.
Yeah.
And actually a bit, and again, I say it was by accident when the minister wrote the law. Really, when I said it was ignorance that helped us, it's not a joke. It was really like that. No one had even an idea what's all about. What's passive house exactly? What are we talking about? And they were all coming with theoretical studies, extra costs, and we were coming with real cases. You said extra costs. Look, here they were not. And say, yeah, you have to train everyone. I say, yeah, but look here, no one has been trained. I don't say it's fantastic, but that's real. In some other camps, you cannot in retrofit or in affordable housing, social housing. How people are going to behave and say, yeah, maybe in your study, but in reality, look, it's okay, fine.
Yeah.
So it was all the time like that. So you see, after a while, this is why I would say, maybe it's not very politically correct, but I would say first vote and then go to the sector and accept that it's going to escape you, as I said, at the moment. And fine, that means that the sector or people leads again or lead back.
Yeah. There's one thing you've said twice in your presentation that surprised me. You imply a certain desirability for independence from grids. And one of the things we've been discussing is the value of having all of the houses passive standard, but connected to the grid in order to decarbonize the energy that is used. Can you speak to that? Why is it good to be independent of the grid versus using the grid for your benefit?
To be independent from the grid, this is what is expecting us maybe in 10, 15 years. So whether we like it or not, it's over. It's going to happen. So what we discover is as soon as you have districts or buildings that are a bit beyond passive house, close to zero, let's say in between, and you do a local grid or a local, you can create, now we see more and more energy communities. And the nice thing is you start sharing the cost and sharing the, what you provide to one and another. And it's also because we're going to face that. So maybe you know that graph from Jean Covici, when he said they had to study for France when war starts. Can we be self-sufficient? So that's the 16 main provider, all provider in the world, and they all had the peak at the maximum in 2018. So we are just going down now. So whether we like it or not, in 10, 15 years, we're going to have almost half of the oil which is there. And same for the gas. So you see, it's going to happen one way or another. So it's just a question how you prevent it, how the little you do, how you help to manage in the future.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that was claimed as a success was the Montreal Protocol for the ozone chemicals, and that actually worked over time. So we're starting work on a similar protocol for high performance buildings that we want to push through the United Nations. What would you think should be the anchor aspects of such a protocol? I know that you want to get the law through, you want to have examples at a local level, but what would you say is the foundation of such a UN protocol?
Well, I don't know enough this one. We should work on it, and as I said, maybe we should do a small working group during the session in Ireland, because there might be maybe some good things to take out of that.
Okay.
Scott, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to run out.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really fabulous, and we're going to continue with some discussions here, but we're going to send your video far and wide. It was really awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good luck on your
for everyone.
Good luck. Tomas, you've got your hand up. The person you were going to ask might have left, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, good to see everybody. And Sebastian is such a powerhouse, and I never get tired listening to him. And so that was great. Thanks very much for organizing that. Just, I suppose, an observation, looking back over 20 years doing this kind of work. And there's an interesting dynamic taking place now, which is only, I think, is very recent. So up to now, mostly energy standards are being driven by policy. In other words, nobody's doing anything unless they're forced to do it. And Sebastian, was explaining very nicely there that in Brussels, they introduced a really good standard a long time ago and basically made this massive leap. What we're noticing now is that a lot of people now are leapfrogging the building code. In other words, they're saying, look, building code is moving too slow for us. We're going to actually sort of go ahead and plow our own furrow. And the reason that's happening is because a lot of investment now is coming from pension funds, from doctors and nurses' pension funds, and they want to know that their money is being invested in something green and sustainable. And so we're working on some projects now, some very, very large projects, which are happening because not of code, but because they're happening because of ESG, environmental social governance. And so that's a very interesting dynamic. And the public listed companies, so there's some publicly listed construction companies in Ireland, house providers, and they now want to be seen to do green and want to do green. And so, in fact, the code question now, at least from my end of the telescope, quote Bob Cavey, is becoming less relevant, you know, as people are stepping up. So I just want to, it's not really a question, it's more of an observation. I could see Sebastian was looking to depart there. So look, that's a comment. I don't know if that's interesting to people or not, but definitely we're seeing that here.
I do want you to appreciate, and I'm sure all of you recognize that the films that he put up at the very beginning, the shower scene from Psycho, and I think that's the impact that you want to have early on your whole community, so people are really shocked into real action. I had a question that maybe this group could answer. I was very surprised to see that he had net zero well to the right of the passive standard. And I imagine that's because of the embodied carbon aspects of net zero. But everybody talks about near zero. So if we're looking at near zero, net zero, and passive, how do you connect those three? Because they're not doing the same things. Does anybody have a view on that? Nobody has a view.
I have a view, but I've just spoken at length there. So, but just very briefly, 2 days ago, the European Parliament just voted on a new EU-wide law to go from nearly zero to zero. So your question is very timely there, and this is all yet to be defined accurately and then transposed to national governments. But we are going from nearly zero to zero. One other, just a technical thing, you know, buildings that are built to the passive house standard still have enormous energy use in terms of appliances and
Right.
lighting and ventilation. So they do crush conditioning energy like heating, cooling. But we have an awful lot. I mean, there's a huge distance to go between passive house and net zero operational, never mind embodied.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there is a lot of, I mean, I love passive house, obviously, and it's something that we've been working on very aggressively, but, you know, there's an awful long way to go to get to net zero operational. And then the whole net zero embodied is like, it's just like a vast other space that we have a lot of work to do on.
The other two questions that I'll just tell you all what the questions are, then I'm going to hand it back to Barbara Ann because I realize that we're getting close to the end of our time, and I know she's got a couple of announcements that she'd like to make. The first one was connecting the dots, and Sebastian had a bit of that with his donut, where we're not just trying to achieve energy efficiency and we're not just trying to achieve carbon efficiency, but you actually are connecting to mobility and water and waste and, as he called it, regenerative buildings. And the question for eventually a protocol is, how do we connect all of those into a coherent? It's zero, but it's zero plus all of these other objectives as well. And I think that'll be a challenge going forward, is to make sure that we are delivering on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in addition to the climate challenge. And those have to be done together. The second question, which Sebastian, I think, dealt with in part, and I think it's a question that all of the communities will have to deal with, is getting full engagement of the entire buildings community, the stakeholders who deliver on buildings, getting them to work towards a common set of objectives and in a collaborative way. A final remark, which wasn't going to be one of my questions, but Sebastian raised it in his talk, is not all of retrofits are going to happen because of the economics. So something that Rufus Grantham said in Cork was that there are other beneficiaries of high performance buildings who should be participating in the financing of the retrofit market, and that would open up a much bigger slice. I'm going to stop. I don't know if anybody who's in the audience would like to make any remarks. If not, and I'm looking for hands, I'm going to turn it to Barbara Ann about the next webinars and about the summit. Barbara Ann?
Thanks, Scott. And Sebastian's gone, but it was a wonderful presentation. I want to see all that again, and I want to see it in Scorthy, and I want to go through it in detail, really. I want to see it. I'll have to watch it again when we put it on our website. Just to remind everyone, our next webinar is on May the 8th. at 4 p.m. Irish time, when Andrew Simmons from the Association of Environment Conscious Buildings, that's AECB in the UK, will present our webinar. We won't be having one in April because, of course, our summit will be on in April. Our summit, it coincides. So I'm going to circulate a flyer and a link to a registration form. Our summit takes place from April 8th to 10th, 2024. We hope to see as many of you as possible in Enniscorthy for that. Sebastian is coming. He is going to be one of those presenting at our webinar. We do want to see, if I send you on links and flyers, please feel free to share with anyone that you think would like to come. The same with our webinars that we hold every month. Share our links with people who you think that we can help and who might want to join the Buildings Action Coalition. So I suppose it's middle of March here in Ireland. It's raining. That's no surprise. So from here in Ireland, I want to wish you all a happy St. Patrick's weekend, because our St. Patrick's Day is on Sunday. It's celebrated more in other countries than here in some cases, from what I have seen. So if you get a chance to wear green and show your Irish roots this weekend, please do. And in the meanwhile, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in April in Enniscorthy. If not, we'll see you at our next webinar in May. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
It's just us.